After pretending to be dead on his previous trips, Arthur is now living a quiet life in Rio de Janeiro under a fake name. One afternoon, Arthur is relaxing at a nice restaurant when Renee comes up to him with proof of who he really is. She works for a strong man who wants Arthur to kill 3 enemies and make it look like it was an accident. If he says no, her boss will tell the bad guys that Arthur is still alive. Arthur takes out his phone as if to make a call, but what he really does is take a picture of Renee. She pulls out her gun, and Arthur pushes the table against her to say he won't take her up on the offer. Renee's goons attack Arthur, and he fights them all with his self-defense skills and anything else he can find in the restaurant, including the grill. Arthur finally gets away by running onto the roof of a passing sky tram. Renee and her men get on the same tram and try to shoot Arthur from inside. Renee also tries to climb up to him, so Arthur jumps on the back of a hand glider and gets away. When Arthur gets back to his boat in the evening, he finds some strange people looking at it. He uses a remote to set off the bombs he put on the boat in case of an emergency. This causes the boat to explode and kills the people on it. After that, he goes to an old box where he keeps all of his tools and burns his old passport so that he can get a new one. Arthur moves to Thailand at the end, where his old friend May gives him back his old hut. Arthur has hidden extra weapons and tools under the floor of the cabin, so he starts looking into Renee right away. He finds out that she works for Crane, a dangerous criminal he already knows well. The next day, a woman named Gina comes to May's house to ask if she has any first aid supplies. May notices that she has a few bruises, but Gina refuses any more help. When night comes, May hears screams coming from one of the boats and sees a man named Frank beating Gina badly. Arthur doesn't want to help May, but he knows he has to because May asked him to. Arthur gets on the yacht and tries to ask Gina for her in a nice way, but Frank hits him. Arthur fights back right away, and when Frank falls, he hits his head on the ground and dies. Gina passes out when she sees the dead, so May runs to the boat to bring her to land. In the meantime, Arthur looks around and finds a revolver, Gina's passport, and a phone with a picture of himself on it. Then Arthur lights the boat on fire. Arthur wakes Gina up when he gets to the hut. He points a gun at her and asks if she works for Crane. Gina tries to get him to stop, but Arthur beats her easily and makes her talk. Gina was sent by Crane, but she does not work for him. He's forcing her to do so by threatening her. She was supposed to act like a helpless victim to get Arthur's attention, but Frank played his part too well. The plan was for her to get close to Arthur and then call Crane, but Arthur told her not to do that and that he would decide when these guys would show up. The next day, Arthur finds out that Gina used to be part of a group that helped people in Cambodia. Arthur asks Gina what Crane has on her, and she tells him that she ran a safe house for people who had been trafficked. A worker went missing a few weeks ago, and her dead body was found at her door 2 days later. If Gina didn't agree to do this job for Crane, he sent a goon to kill the children. Later, Arthur comes across a boat with men on it who are looking at the coast. Most likely, Crane sent them, so Arthur walks around with Gina to make it look like her assignment is going well. May knows this and includes some old Thai rituals in a party she's planning to bring Arthur and Gina together. They end up having a great time together. In the evening, Gina says she's sorry to Arthur for getting him into this trouble. Arthur says that he gets it because he was an orphan himself. Crane was there when he was sold to a gangster who taught young warriors how to fight. Arthur got away, but Crane didn't. Arthur thinks Crane is to blame, so he wants to get even with him. After they kiss, Gina and Arthur spend the night together. After that, Arthur tells Gina that he has been making plans for her to get away without putting the children in danger. He won't kill the people Crane wants him to, instead, he will kill Crane himself. Arthur gives Gina his father's watch, which is the only thing he remembers about him. The next morning, a group of cops shows up at the beach, but Gina can tell that one of them is Crane's man. Arthur tries to fight them off, but while he is doing so, the guys grab Gina. This makes Arthur agree to meet with Crane. Then, Crane tells Arthur that if he wants Gina back, he has to kill 3 people for him and make it look like it was an accident. The first is Krull, who is Africa's most famous arms dealer and is now in jail in Malaysia. Crane also gives him a pill that he needs to take after the murder so that they can find him. Gina is kept hidden while Arthur works on one of Crane's boats. Arthur goes to Malaysia to learn more about the prison, which is on a cliff and surrounded by shark-infested waterways, making it impossible to break in. Arthur comes up with a plan and buys dangerous explosives that look like chewing tobacco, shark repellent that looks like a jar of skin cream, and a capsule that looks like a cigarette. Finally, he makes a fake ID and dresses up as a well-known criminal on the run. Arthur is caught as soon as he starts walking around the streets of Malaysia. The prison's receptionist doesn't notice anything strange about his things, so he or she lets them keep them. The first few days, Arthur takes it easy and talks to other prisoners to learn more about his goal. Many people want to kill Krull, so his men are always following him. Even though Krull is locked up, he runs his business from here and is really in charge of the place. Arthur sees 2 prisoners trade a knife, and then, at lunchtime, he tries to accidentally run into them to steal the knife. Later, one of Krull's old men tries to kill Krull as revenge, but Arthur stops him and kills him with the knife. Krill is impressed and asks Arthur to join him for dinner, but Arthur will only go if Krill agrees to leave his men outside. Krill agrees to Arthur's demands, which came as a surprise. Arthur is taken from his cell in the evening and taken to Krill's private hut. Krill tries to hire Arthur, but as soon as he turns around, Arthur jumps on him, puts pressure on his neck, and strangles him to death. Then he mixes Krill's actual drink with the snake venom he used in his rituals to make it look like Krill killed himself. The guards outside are getting suspicious, so Arthur puts the body in a prayer position to make them think the silence is because of religion. Then, Arthur uses the explosive gum to break through a wall of the jail. Then he takes the medicine, puts on the shark repellent, and jumps into the water before the police can catch him. Arthur is able to get away safely because Crane's men are waiting for him in a fishing boat. Crane uses a video chat to make sure Gina is safe and to give Arthur information about his second target, an Australian human trafficker named Adrian Cook. A few days later, Arthur is still looking for the person he wants to find. Cook's penthouse suite is impregnable, but he also has a cantilever pool that overhangs above the streets, which he discovers. Arthur rents a helicopter to survey the building from above, then pretends to be interested in one of the nearby flats. While the realtor shows him around, Arthur calls her phone to keep her from focusing on him and takes a picture of the apartment keys so he can make copies. Finally, he employs hazardous chemicals to generate a small but powerful explosive capable of shattering glass and making it appear to have broken due to pressure. A few days later, Arthur pretends to be a technician so he can get into the building without being seen. He then uses the duplicate key to get into the flat. Arthur gets out of the building through a window and climbs up the structure until he gets to the pool. There, he drills a small hole and puts his special explosive in it. Cook is swimming and can see Arthur, but before he can tell the guards, the glass starts to break. As the swimming pool breaks and Cook falls to his death, Arthur jumps out and slides down the building to his apartment. The news tells Crane that Cook has died, so he tells his men to get ready for the next video call. Gina realizes that they make her sit near a window that shows the boat's hull number, so she moves the camera to include the window. When the phone call begins, Gina extends her hand to show Arthur the watch in order to get him to look at the number. As soon as the henchman figures out what's going on, he cuts off the connection. However, Arthur gets the number and uses it to find the boat. Later, Arthur tells a helicopter to follow Crane's boat, and he jumps into the water with a bag full of special equipment. After hiding the suitcase under the boat, Arthur sneaks on board and starts killing every man he meets. He gets caught, though, and Arthur has to fight a group of bad guys, while Gina is taken out of the room. She tries to defend herself, but her basic skills aren't good enough, so she's put in a helicopter. Arthur jumps on one of the guards and uses him as a shield, while he throws his grenade at the bad guys who are after him. But more men come up to him and tase him so they can catch him. Gina and Arthur are then moved to another boat, where Crane says he knew Arthur would do this because he can't stop himself, but he still has to do the third killing. When Crane leaves, Arthur fights the guards instead of letting them carry him away the right way. Then he jumps into the water to get his gear, which includes a tank of oxygen and a small engine that help him get away safely. A few days later, Arthur is in Bulgaria. There, he finds out that an American arms dealer named Max Adams was the most recent person to be killed. Arthur starts his investigation and finds out that Adams keeps submarines with intercontinental ballistic missiles in a high-security stronghold. He also knows that Crane is trying to get rid of all of his competitors in the arms trade by killing them. This makes him think twice. Later, Arthur shoots one of Adams' guards from a distance and then sneaks onto the roof of a hospital to hide in the emergency helicopter. Arthur is able to get into the building while everyone is watching the pilot fly to Adams' fortress to check on the hurt soldier. Inside, he sets up a jammer to stop the security cameras from working. If he finds any guards, he attacks them. Soon, the building is put on high alert, and Adams' goons go with him to his panic room. However, Arthur delays them by making the elevator stop working. Arthur is waiting for Adams in his room when he gets there. But Arthur doesn't shoot. Instead, he offers to work with Adams to get rid of Crane. The first step in Arthur's plan is for Adams to act like he's dead. Later, as Adams walks across a bridge to check on his submarines, a bomb goes off. To get Adams to a beach, Arthur is ready to go underwater and shares an oxygen tank with him. Crane watches the explosion on TV. The news says that Adams was buried in the water under a pile of debris. Arthur calls him at that moment to tell him about the third murder, but Crane won't believe him until he sees the body. After Arthur says that Adams' body might be underwater, Crane sends his men to find Adams' body and kill Arthur. Arthur goes back to the underwater pen and sets up a bunch of traps. When Crane's goons show up, one by one, they fall into the traps and die. Those who don't die in the traps are killed by Arthur from the shadows. Crane knows that Arthur is after him, so he puts Gina outside as bait. Arthur jumps into the water and swims to the boat. Once there, he kills every guard he sees. Crane sees him on the surveillance tape and tells his men to bring Gina back inside before Arthur turns off the cameras. Gina fights the guard who grabbed her and hurt her stomach. The guard then drags her into the jacuzzi, where Crane grabs her. While Arthur is still fighting the guards, Crane takes Gina inside and sets off an explosion that was hidden in the boat. He leaves in his rescue boat to try to get away. Arthur puts Gina in an emergency release pod and sends her away after he finds her and learns about the bombs. After that, Arthur goes after Crane. He kills the last few guards before getting into a hand-to-hand fight with Crane. Crane grabs the anchor chain and tries to catch Arthur by the leg, but Arthur uses the length of the chain to tie Crane to the boat. Crane laughs because Arthur took too long and would also die, but Arthur doesn't seem to care and runs inside just before the bomb goes off. Gina is sad about Arthur's death as she watches the boat break up and start to burn. At the very least, the explosion showed where they were, and the Coast Guard came and saved her. Adams is also watching from the shore. He notices something strange about the boat parts being brought in from the water, and he also sees a surveillance camera nearby. A few weeks later, Gina and her kids are back in Cambodia, and she writes to May to thank her for the water filter. She is shocked to find out that Arthur is still alive and has come to see her while she is teaching one afternoon. Adams looks into Crane's boat and finds that it has a diving bell, which keeps air inside and lets divers breathe underwater. Adams looks at the surveillance tape and sees that Arthur hid in the diving bell to get away. Adams likes this plan, so he gets rid of the footage to protect Arthur's future.